Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into one of the most profound, intricate philosophical systems on the planet, Sanatana Dharma, which you probably know as Hinduism. We aren't just skimming the surface with a basic list of beliefs here. Instead, we're going to explore the absolute entirety of Hindu theology and cosmology, strictly looking at it through its own brilliant internal logic. It's like a massive cosmic puzzle, and we're putting the pieces together. To do this, we're taking a macro to micro journey. We'll start way out with ultimate reality and cosmic law, trace the ancient textual traditions and the divine pantheon, look at how the gods descend to Earth, explore the major living sects, and finally zoom all the way into daily worship and personal liberation. Let's get right into it. So, starting at the very beginning, our first section, ultimate reality and cosmic law. At the absolute pinnacle of Hindu metaphysics, we have Brahman. Now think of Brahman as the non-dual, all-pervading cosmic spirit. It is literally the fabric of all existence. But here's where it gets philosophically fascinating. Brahman exists on a spectrum. On one end, you have Nirguna Brahman, the formless, infinite, entirely unconditioned absolute reality. But let's be real, the human mind kind of short-circuits trying to grasp the infinite, right? Because of that, Brahman also manifests as Saguna, the divine with accessible personal attributes. It's the exact same ultimate reality, just perceived in two distinct ways. Now, what about us? Well, beneath the illusion of our physical separation, a concept known as Maya, lies the Atman. The Atman is your eternal, unconditioned inner self. It is totally distinct from your physical body, your ego, or your mind. In Hindu philosophy, this individual soul is intricately linked to, and in many traditions considered completely identical to, that ultimate reality of Brahman, meaning you are, at your very core, a spark of the cosmic fire. How incredible is that? But here's the catch. While your Atman is eternal, right now it's traveling through samsara, which is the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And this loop isn't random. It's entirely governed by karma. You've heard the word, but in this context, karma is the absolute cosmic law of moral cause and effect. Every single action, every deed you perform, generates a consequence. And that consequence shapes not just your current circumstances, but your future reality in the next life. So what's the way out? That brings us to the ultimate, supreme goal of existence, moksha, complete and total liberation. When a soul finally achieves moksha, they've completely overcome ignorance and worldly attachments. They attain this profound realization of the Atman that shatters the cycle of rebirth once and for all. No more samsara, just eternal peace and total unity with Brahman. However, before you reach moksha, you still have to live out your earthly life. And this is guided by the purusharthas, the four aims of life. It's actually a remarkably pragmatic framework. First, you have dharma, your moral duty, which basically acts as an ethical filter for everything else. Then there's artha, the pursuit of wealth and a meaningful career, and kama, the legitimate pursuit of joy, passion, and sensory pleasure. Hinduism says all of these are completely valid and healthy as long as they are rooted in dharma, ultimately pointing you toward that final goal of moksha. Moving on to our second section, let's look at the ancient texts that actually preserve all these cosmic ideas, the Shruti and Smriti traditions. Hindu literature is fundamentally categorized by its level of authority. At the very top, we have Shruti, which translates to that which is heard. These are the supreme, unauthored, divinely revealed truths that ancient sages received directly in deep meditation. Think of the Vedas and Upanishads. They hold absolute, unquestionable authority. Then you have the second category, Smriti, or that which is remembered. These are human-authored, contextual texts like the great epics. They basically take those high-level Shruti truths and interpret them for everyday, practical life. If we trace the timeline, it starts with the foundational Vedic fire rituals and hymns around 1500 BCE. Fast forward to 800 BCE, and the Upanishads shift the focus heavily toward deep, contemplative philosophy. As time goes on, the religion naturally expands to reach the masses. By 200 BCE, we get the sweeping narratives of the epics, like the Mahabharata. And then by 300 CE, we enter the era of classical, devotional Hinduism with the Puranas, which, as we'll discuss shortly, become absolutely vital for understanding intense, personal devotion. All right, that brings us to Section 3, the Trimurti and the Hindu pantheon. So, how does formless reality actually function in the universe? Enter the Trimurti, the cosmic triad. You've got Brahma, who generates creation, Vishnu, who sustains and preserves it, and Shiva, who acts as the transformer, dissolving creation to maintain cosmic balance. But here is the absolute kicker. We have to talk about Devi, or Shakti, the divine feminine. Shakti is literally the cosmic energy that animates the entire universe. Without her, the gods are completely powerless. All of these incredible deities, they are just functional manifestations of that one supreme reality, Brahman. I absolutely love this quote from the Isha Upanishad. It says, "He who sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings, how can there be delusion or grief when he sees this oneness everywhere?" It perfectly explains how a Hindu can enthusiastically worship a pantheon of millions of gods, like Ganesha for removing obstacles, or Lakshmi for prosperity, while still maintaining with absolute certainty that God is ultimately one. It's all the exact same self, just reflecting through an infinite, beautiful prism of divine forms. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Divine Descents and Avatars. You've definitely heard the word avatar, but what does it actually mean in Hindu metaphysics? An avatar is a physical, material incarnation of a deity on Earth. Whenever the moral fabric of the universe, Dharma, is severely threatened by chaos or evil, the divine literally steps down into the material world to fix it and restore cosmic balance. This amazing mechanism is most famously associated with Vishnu, the preserver. In fact, Vishnu has 10 primary descents, collectively known as the Dashavatara. The most famous of these are Rama, who is the ultimate embodiment of righteousness and duty, and Krishna, the divine statesman and teacher who delivers the profound philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. But interestingly enough, the cycle isn't over. Hindu cosmology actually anticipates Kalki, the prophetic final avatar who is yet to come, whose ultimate mission will be to end our current age of darkness. Now let's look at how all of this organizes into living traditions in Section 5, the 4 major Hindu sects. Hinduism is beautifully diverse, branching primarily into 4 distinct major sects. You have Shaivism, focusing on Shiva, Shaktism, centered on the Divine Mother, and Smartism, which treats 5 primary deities equally as gateways to the formless Brahman. But let's look closely at Vaishnavism. The theology here gets incredibly deep. If you dive into 16th century thinkers like Jiva Goswami, you find this brilliant analysis of Bhagavan, the Supreme Person, as the ultimate absolute reality possessing all opulences. In this tradition, the Bhagavata Purana isn't just a storybook. It is the definitive scriptural source that establishes this intense, loving devotion to Krishna and Vishnu. And finally, we zoom all the way in for Section 6, Worship, Praxis, and Liberation. So how do everyday people actually practice this? At the very heart of daily Hindu life is puja. This is the act of ritual worship where practitioners make sensory offerings of light, flowers, and water. Puja is entirely centered around a murti. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that a murti is not a mere idol. It is a highly consecrated image that acts as a physical anchor. It literally allows the human mind to focus upon and tangibly interact with an otherwise infinite and ungraspable divine presence. This beautiful worship generally takes place in 2 main settings. On one hand, you have the mandir, or temple. This is all about community worship, featuring grand architecture and elaborate formal rituals led by trained priests. But on the other hand, almost every single Hindu household has a home shrine. This is the space for daily personal devotion. It's incredibly intimate, localized, and it's where families connect directly with their chosen deities on a deeply personal level. Ultimately, all of these practices are expressions of the 4 yogas, the distinct, established paths to achieving that final goal of moksha. And Hinduism offers amazing flexibility here. You've got Bhakti Yoga for those driven by profound love and devotion. You've got Jnana Yoga for the intellectually and philosophically curious. Karma Yoga is for those dedicated to selfless action in the world. And Raja Yoga is for practitioners of deep meditation and strict aesthetic discipline. Basically, there is a totally valid, recognized path for every single type of human temperament. Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We've traveled from the infinite, abstract reality of Brahman all the way down to the physical flowers offered at a family's home shrine. So I want to leave you with this thought. As you navigate the endless cycle of your own actions and consequences, which path of yoga best aligns with your inner Dharma on your own personal journey to self-realization? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.